This is Byoung, architect from Seoul, Korea. I started my office about 30 years ago. When I was young, I looked at newly built beautiful buildings after Korean War in 50s and 60s, 70s. Just many buildings, but from 80s, I started to see really nice buildings going up, and I was so curious about buildings and job as an architect. So I and I went to US and attended architecture school. I liked it, and since then I've been doing it since 1982, since I started architecture school in 82. Yeah. I first attended Montana State University, which is a state university. So education is really profound and emphasize all the responsibilities as an architect, and all technical things were very important. And I practiced a little bit in Boston, and I attended Harvard University for graduate school. There, I thought education was a little different from Montana State University. They try to teach more creative and new way of thinking and kind of making different architecture there. So it was different. But first 4 or 5 years of education in Montana State University was more profound and a lot of technical things and responsibilities as an architect was emphasized. Really good teachers in Montana, but also I had good teachers like Rafael Maneo, was the chairman when I was a student there. And Max Kagan was very different one, American architect, and who was also my teacher, emphasized more intuitive ways in architecture, the importance of intuition in architecture. He emphasized. I've been influenced from him. And Peter Rose, I had him as a teacher for a long time, for 2 semesters, and he was a student of Louis Kahn. So he talked a lot about Louis Kahn and experience in architecture. He brought up always and tried to tell us. Also, I studied 1 semester in ETH Zurich as a student, as an exchange student. And there I met Mario Campi and many other younger Swiss architects at that time, and kind of really well-controlled and the minimal architecture. I think I've been influenced. And also later I met Kenneth Frampton, and we had chances to talk about architecture and the way of going in architecture. And so I think I've been influenced by him and his essays and books, Critical Rationalism, his essay, and Cultural Tectonics in Architecture, and it was kind of modern architecture, but regional somehow. And yeah, so I think those been my influence, I guess. Yeah. Korea is kind of sandwiched between China and Japan, and also these Asian countries and US and Europe today. Even though Korea is just a small country between China and Japan, I think it had very strong character historically. If you see pottery, for example, or paintings, folk art paintings, it has very strong kind of intuitive, experiential kind of quality as you can find in African art, for example. So I always thought Korean architecture and art has great potential. But I noticed last few years, K-pop and K-food are becoming more popular than architecture as Koreans. But there is a kind of underlying same energy underneath. And I try to bring that up. I define that energy as mock and kind of imperfect, but warm, kind of a balance in art, architecture, and everyday living in Korean traditional ways. You could find it easily, and still in contemporary living, I see that still existing in Korean culture. Well, after going to school and working, I spent about a little over 10 years in US and a little of time in Europe. And when I returned back 1992, I think I returned. And Korea was growing so fast economically and get to be known after Summer Olympic Game, Seoul Olympic Game. And the country started to open up. And more people went to US, Europe, and come back to Korea. So it was the time of kind of changing and looking for something new and more contemporary and different. But still, it was not fully developed or settled, so it had more opportunities to explore something new and different. So I thought I came in the right time, 1993, when people were looking for something new and different. And it was relatively easy for me to start work in Korea. Because if you're looking for someone's like me who had influence from outside of Korea, and it was a great time. Yeah. Since then, I started my own office exactly 30 years ago from this year. Korea has been developing and changing dramatically. But still, I knew Korea has great potential, as I mentioned earlier, with the aesthetic and culture. And so I always had a great interest. But not only me, but also a large group of people in every field still look for Korean traditions. And contemporary, we are living in really contemporary societies that all the bank systems and working systems are following all international now, which is different from what it used to be. So there have been some conflict between the values of traditional and contemporary. So it was difficult to judge what is right and what is wrong and which way to go and how much you want to bring traditional or the value that you really believe still exists in Korea, or bring something new for what future. So I thought I've been trying to explore kind of relatively new way of making some art or architecture that address contemporary issues, but still rooted in traditional values. But in other aspects, when I think more and more about this, I realize a lot of contemporary culture, modern art, and especially last maybe 200 years, expressionism, and early 19th century's Bauhaus and modern movement been strongly influenced by Eastern philosophies and ideas. As Gropius said, modernism has been done 500 years ago here in Japan, he said, when he visited Japan. But Japanese traditional architecture has been influenced from Korean architecture, and Korean architecture has been influenced from Chinese architecture. It's all related, and it's all influenced by the philosophy of Eun-yang, Tao Te Ching, and Buddhism. And so I think we have taken a lot from Western societies and contemporary movements, but also I realize Western art and architecture took a lot of ideas from that. So this probably the reason how people accept so easily this contemporary Western culture and kind of sometimes minimal or sometimes organic way of thinking in architecture and art and philosophies. I would say until 1970s, Korea was busy to build buildings to function. But since then, little better buildings for longer life has been built. But I think it's only since about last 10 years that people look for something different, something that address their character or with some design, I think. So for that reason, people start to respect architect or select architect who they like and who has more characters in that aspects. So in general, architects start to get attention last 20, 30 years more than before. But last about since 10 years, I think architects get more interesting opportunities and more respect in some ways. So today, there are many good architects in Seoul and Korea, as in other countries. But so it's competitive. It became more competitive, and but still there are more market with people who look for better architecture, better buildings, and more artistic buildings sometimes. Yeah. Korea has a lot of public projects now and lots of public competitions, but we have been focusing into projects that we get commissioned. We've been busy to participate in competitions, but I feel like I should wish to participate in competitions more.
Have you done something outside Korea?
I had small projects done in United States, and we designed also done a project in Malaysia, right next to Singapore. Joe Baru, Wire Institute, Research Institute, and some headquarter building in Tokyo, but which is not built yet. We do some projects, but we focus more into this Korean kind of context and clients. Teaching provides you kind of some inspiration and doubts, mostly through students. Even though with the students you talk your own way, so I sometimes push this way, that way, but still you get surprised to see students do very interesting, different ideas. So teaching to me was important part of my architecture, developing my architecture and thinking in architecture. But at the same time, it's really time consuming. And when you teach more than 5-10 years, it becomes kind of repetitive pattern. So I try to leave from teaching, permanent teaching, full-time teaching. So I teach only once in a while in different ways. And architects can teach by doing, creating some good buildings and making the buildings. You can talk to young architects in your office and talk more seriously and develop it together and make a building. In that, it's a similar process. It's different. It's an actual project, but you got to think more seriously. And if you get interesting projects enough, and then you can really bring up some talks, ideas, and philosophies, and different ways of makings, and many interesting things. Of course, it is very important to have smart, talented people in the group. And to me, the meaning of doing architecture is not only making buildings, but communicating with people, clients, and employees. But in a relationship with me, but their own in their own aspect, just independent architect and independent person. So it is also interesting to not only talk, but also through the talk, learn from them and widen the perspective or renew your thinkings. And so I decided to have partners about 5 years ago, and now I have 3 partners, and I try to develop ideas together. And I get influence from them, I influence them, but it is always interesting to see slightly differently doing and thinking their own ways. So it is so much fun to be influenced from them and to see and experience the new kind of outcomes from them. So I like to introduce my, young partners, and they're so talented ones, Jihyun and Chaeyoon. What is hardest thing to learn is if you're right or wrong, how can I do judgments about the direction I go? So when you are in school, your professors can tell you it's good or bad. But when you're your own, it is difficult. So I ask people and partners, as I say, but decision is your own, always difficult. And you never know if it's right or wrong until 20, 30 years pass. Then I look back. I was right. Making architecture and living with architecture is the same thing as developing relationship with people, influencing each other, and liking each other, and learning from each other. And so I try to find all the inspirations more through non-architecture, like art, potteries, philosophies, and essays. I read great essays of early 1930s recently. So it's really, really fantastic inspirations you get. And especially art, you can really explore more of ideas. Especially, I like to explore the idea of mock. So incomplete perfection somehow. And so not only I do paintings, but also exhibit. And when visitor comes, I show and talk. And sometimes I listen to music and drink. And that's part of architecture in my life.